Okay. Yeah, so the idea of standing, if we're standing still, is that you're coming back, you're coming home, you're coming to the body, Dantian as center of the body. And so you almost like become a statue. You're coming back to stillness. And of course, if you were completely still, you would be a statue. But that is really just like the first stage. So the idea is that by coming back to stillness, and it's a bit like, the human mind, with its sort of natural curiosity, will just naturally get bored when things just remain the same for too long. So we don't want that to cause this to wander. We want that natural curiosity and boredom to rouse the spirit, to call something to us that will just make the most mundane, simple, and boring things charged with a life. So we come back to the body, we come back to stillness, and that it just puts pressure on reality in the sense to actually infuse it with an energy that makes it sparkle. Yeah. And of course, people never get there because this starts wandering first, and then all that is just dispersed. So it's just the discipline to just come back home and just wait. Just be patient. That's what meditation is. You're just coming home and you're just waiting. You're waiting for the Holy Spirit, basically, because all spirit is holy, yeah, but especially spirit that is called by an inner stillness, yeah. So we just start moving really to stop it just from becoming too solid, too still, too statuesque, because that will just tend to lead to what in meditation they call a stupor. Yeah. So don't fall into a stupor. Yeah. So there has to be a level of activity, a little bit of a tremble. So in a sense, you have to be attractive. You have to somehow make yourself attractive so that the Holy Spirit will want to come down and infuse. And it's not something you can make happen. Is all you can do is just create the conditions where it's likely to happen or more likely to happen. And then just wait. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, then you just have to wait a little bit longer. Yeah, so sometimes, I'm sitting, because I sit at night, and normally I meditate at night. And it will take 2.5 hours before I feel a presence in the room. Yeah. And that's, so you just have to wait as long as it takes. You just have to really, really be patient and just enjoy the waiting. So it's not an ordeal that you're having to put yourself through. You're not suffering. Yeah, so one of the things about our noisy minds, because normally that noise will manifest as like a conversation or a voice that's talking, one's talking to oneself. So that just has the rhythm of language, the rhythm of conversation. And that's really, really limited. Yeah. And so it tends to make us limited. You know, we think, you know, we know everything because we have produced our own environment. So everything in our environment runs basically at the same rhythm of that voice in the head. So in meditation, you're just trying to slip into longer rhythms, these sort of deep rumbles that are just grumbling away underneath your feet and in the background. Yeah. So everything is slow. So if you can hit a different rhythm, then this will just quieten, it will just stop, or it will really recede. You'll hear some sort of natter going on in the background. So we'd just like to extend our range. So really get into the deep. This is why Tai Chi is so slow. Yeah. So getting into longer frequencies and also getting into shorter ones. So when the spirit comes up, that's basically when you get into the really short frequencies. Suddenly you're alert and sprightly and quick. Yeah. So we just want to get out of that mid-range because it's just deadly. Yeah. That's where the herd lives. And the last thing you want to be is a member of the herd. Yes, just feel the backward and forward, a bit like floating in the sea with, you know, the waves just sloshing you back and forth. And those waves just coming from like a really deep and massive energy source, the actual ocean. And just allow the breathing to deepen and lengthen. Yeah, so that's, you know, when they concentrate on the breathing in meditation, it's basically the way, you know, the normal way of actually getting out of that sort of mid-range natter, because it's a much longer frequency, much longer wavelength than that's being generated in your mind by the conversation, by the talk, the chatter. So you've got this external movement of your body, just moving from leg to leg. And you've got the internal movement of your breathing. And we're just trying to harmonize them, really. And then we just want to bring the mind to bear a little bit more carefully on what's happening in the legs. Feeling the full leg, feeling the empty leg. So to begin with, we will tend to concentrate on the full leg. So when we move slowly, we tend to be with the weight. When we move quickly, we tend to be with the energy. Yeah. So here we're just feeling the weight moving into the full leg, which becomes like a spring, storing the energy, which it then returns. And just really feeling the leg. So as I sink into the leg, it's already trying to push me back up. There just comes a point where the push up becomes stronger than the sinking down. And that's when I start moving back. It's not a decision I've made in my mind. It's a decision that's been made for me in the leg, by the fabric of the leg. Yeah, so feel that flow. It's a flow through the arch of the legs. And the legs are just really gooey and springy, like a really soft rubber. And then some of that energy will just come up into the upper body if you allow it. But there needs to be this sort of almost like a light flamboyance here. Ooh. You know, so you become like a connoisseur of energy. You're just allowing that energy to come up and just make these ripples up your spine and down the arms. And one of the most important ingredients to allow energy to manifest is just to let the head move. Don't lock the head either on what you're looking at or on top of the shoulders. The neck should be really free and the head should be moving all the time. I saw a clip on YouTube of like just pointing out that it was just a clip of Messi, Lionel Messi, and just showing that, you know, when he's not really working, when he's just sort of walking, his head is just moving all the time, yeah, because he's just sussing out where everyone is, yeah, on the pitch. So it's like a sort of, it's an attention, almost like a nervous attention. So when the head stops and locks, it's just an indication that it's thinking to itself. And then just noticing the other leg, the leg that doesn't have the weight in it, the empty one, the one where the energy is. So this is how we attempt to get into spirit, yeah, by just feeling that empty leg calling me, yeah, it's calling me towards it. So something manifests in the foot that wasn't there whilst the weight was in it. You can call it emptiness, you can call it spirit. It doesn't really matter. You just have to feel it pulling you towards it. So we just have to make ourselves really sensitive and responsive to spirit. The most important thing in everything, in the whole of life, yeah? Basically, if you're not responsive to spirit, you're dead. Or you may as well be. I was reading one of those Byung-Chul Han books, you know, Capitalism and the Death Drive, partly because the title really appealed to me. And he quotes Erich Fromm, who in 1972 said, you know, we pride ourselves that our robots are getting more and more lifelike. He says, but actually it's us that's getting more and more robotic. Yeah, it's us that are dying. You know, our souls are dying. It's like with my old ladies, you know, I've got two old ladies I work with. One of them just reached 100 last week. And she's really sprightly, you know, with great spirit. Her spirit is always in evidence, or, you know, it's always willing to pop up. She can be quite depressed when I arrive, but it doesn't, it's within minutes before she's excited. And the other one is always flat and just takes a lot of work to get her up. And the difference between them is that the one that's really spirit and sprightly just lives on her own, does everything herself. I mean, 2 weeks ago, her washing machine broke and she's actually doing all her laundry by hand at 100, yeah. And the other one has a helper, has a Filipino girl who's lovely, who lives in, who does everything. So all she has to do is just sit in the armchair and watch all this negative shit on TV. And it just grinds her down, yeah. Yeah, so everything in popular culture, everything that's available popularly will get you down, will crush the spirit if you let it. You have to live your own life outside the norm, outside the herd. You can seem to be a member of the herd, but you have your own work that is always where you always slip out of it. So something's calling me. I can feel it in the foot, or you can just feel it out there. It's just out there. Yeah. The other. That's what they're saying now that we've lost. We've lost the other. Everything is the same now. We've lost negativity, as Byung-Chul Han puts it. Yeah. There's no longer the negative in everything is positive. And consequently, everything is dead. Because, of course, for life, you need a balance of positive and negative. Yeah. So we feel, we're really attentive to this. Wow. It's like a little sort of dragonfly. John, you remember John? He always used to use that image, the spirit of the dragonfly. Because he had this experience when he was a boy of just sort of playing outside and suddenly a dragonfly came. And for him, it was, you know, like the kestrel was for Gerard Manley Hopkins, you know, an image of Christ in a way, an image of spirit. Something, you know, because you see a dragonfly, they're like really colorful. It's like a shiny metallic color that just glints in the sunlight. And it's there and then it's not there. They have these, they zoom, you know, and then they hover and then they zoom again, just like the kestrel. The wind hover. Yeah, so when you work, there's a sense of coming home. There's a sense that you're returning to something you've done many times before. But there's also a real sense that you've never quite done it like this. Yeah. Okay. And now let's just bring it back to riding horse. And now it's still, but it's sort of bouncy. Yeah. There's a sort of rhythm within it. You've got this natural sort of resonant frequency, your body, and it's not this frequency. Yeah. So if you try and make a system that has a certain resonant frequency vibrate at a different frequency, it just won't respond. Yeah. You need to hit that frequency for the whole system to start heaving and surging. This is what we're trying to do. So this is completely at odds with the natural rhythms of the body, which is why we need to freeze the body to effectively think to ourselves. And this is why, you know, the great philosophers, you know, Kant, Nietzsche, Plato, they're all great walkers. You know, they did their thinking whilst they were walking, because it's the only way to get to any sort of authentic thought. Because if you're sitting and thinking, the thought has far much more to do with you, the wanker, than it has with anything real. Yeah. You're just feeling the breathing and just letting it just heave. So just allowing the breath to come into the spine. So as you breathe in, it's like the spine fills up and it arches you. And then as you breathe out, the spine just sort of just collapses a little bit. I always think of those party squeakers, that are all rolled off, and when you blow them, they make a noise and extend. Yeah. So here it's like I'm curling up. And then here I'm extending because I'm blowing air into the spine. And then here, this is the out breath. So it's just playing with the internal pressure. And just really feeling it and enjoying the sensations. And allowing the sensations to arouse you, to almost eroticize the body, to rouse the libido a little bit. And for that, you really do have to let the head go. Yeah, so we're trying to just make these really big, expansive movements. And then just keep repeating. And then there will be a natural switching at some point. Yeah. So this is all just coming from my breath, coming in and out. It's like I'm blowing up the balloon. And then I'm just allowing it to deflate a little bit. So we're just aiming for like maximum relaxation. But then that will sort of switch and it will start to come much more into like the muscles in your core, what they call core muscles now. So the muscles in the belly and close to the lower spine and the psoas, And then when it gets there, then you just become just much more like a really writhing organic machine. Rather than just a breathing machine. So here, this bit here, we want to feel as though we have to make an effort for this. It's not just enough just to let air out of the body. So here, like someone's trying to hold my hands out, and then I really have to start tightening here to pull them in. And then out. Yeah, so if you really have to make quite an effort to do what you're doing, it will just tend to make it more real. Firstly, it will force spirit to come in because it's that makes you make an effort. And also you'll just feel the muscles better, the internal muscles, which are the ones we're just trying to get to. But you can't get to them immediately. You just really need to go through that large relaxation phase first. Otherwise, what comes up will be an image of what it is that you want. It won't be real. This is what the mind, the ego is very good at. It's very good at producing pretend images. It produces something that seems to be similar, something that's similar, but not the right thing. So the best place to practice this really would be in the pool, with the water up to your neck. And just because here you'd really feel the resistance to this movement. It would be the same resistance as this movement. You're just displacing the water. So this is the muscles in my lower back tightening up and that coming into the arms. And this is the muscles of my belly tightening up, coming into the arms. So with spirit, I locate the internal. And then it will switch again as it sort of intensifies. You keep the mind with it, but the curiosity and the boredom just forces it into different levels of intensity. So when it intensifies even more, basically you'll split into left and right. So you'll want to sort of wriggle with it. You're no longer content with just being this regular single sort of machine that's just going backwards and forwards. It's just a way of getting more energy, more intensity to what you're doing. And again, we want it to come from the energy, from the spirit, not by me designing left and right sort of working against each other a little bit. Yeah, because that, again, that's not authentic. So it has to come from the right place. As John once said, motivation is everything. And just let the head go. And for that, you really just need to unfocus the eyes a little bit so everything becomes blurred. But not completely blurred. So they're blurred in terms of what they're seeing of the external room, but they sort of really wake up to the rhythms that are being created in your body, the rhythms, the flows, the ripples. So it's almost like you see those with your eyes instead of the room. Yeah, so it just becomes creative. It's like you're making something, you're making movements you've never made before. So you start off by making movements that you've made so many times, you're sick to death of it. And then it breaks through. If you can keep your mind on it, it'll always break through into the unknown, yeah, which is where we'd like to be, because that's the healthiest place to abide. Yeah, so what depresses people, that's what Byung-Chul Han says again, what depression just means that you've lost the other. It's all the same. You're basically sick of yourself. You're sick of self. Yeah, so depression in a way, it's quite good, as long as the person can use it as a stimulation to actually jump out. Yeah. Yeah, so we've all become complete narcissists, and consequently, we're all depressed. So some people will hide from their depression by being optimistic and active all the time, what the therapists call active depression, but it's completely inauthentic. And you can feel it, you just want to punch them, because it's just coming from completely the wrong place. I'd much rather be presented by someone who's honestly depressed. Okay, now let's just, same thing, but just bring it into this action. Yeah. So again, we don't just allow the arms down, we pull them down, we make an effort. So, whew. So again, just try and get the sense that you're leading with the fingertips. Yeah. So if let's say this, the way I work with this with my students is I will stand behind them and I'm just holding their hands down gently so that they really have to push here to get them up. And then at the top, I'll quickly switch to have my hands underneath their wrists. And then here they really have to work to get my arms down. And you know, what's interesting is that, you know, they're working away. And if we keep it going long enough, there comes a point where there's like another switch. And instead of pushing against my arm like this and like this, they go with the fingertips, like they're sort of going around the arm like this. And it's so much stronger because it affects my whole body rather than just my arm. So here, get the feeling that your fingertips are leading on the way up, and then just switch and get your fingertips pointing down. Yeah, and you can feel it. It just affects your whole body differently. So it forces you to use your whole body because it requires not just the movement of the arms, but for you to round out. And so at this point here, you need to come over the top and really expand the chest cavity in order to get over. And it's that's the yield there at that point. You sort something inside your chest expands and swallows up the other person's body. And it's really shocking, yeah, when the person does it to you. Often they don't really feel it. That's their problem, not mine. So, whoa. So it's like here you're quite sort of skinny, and then here you go into like a big bear hug. You sort of really expand and you just become a different creature as well. So, and just listen for, you know, the responses in your body to spirit. You know, which you know you could equally call spirit truth. Yeah, something that's really is authentic and true. Yeah, so for me, when the spirit comes up, it forces my body to work differently. And I normally get like two physical responses. One is this ear blocks, and so I have to sort of unpop it, you know, sort of, and it can be like a real problem because I just can't hear or say anything. And the other one is that you sort of hyperventilate a little bit. So the muscles start tightening in the face and the body. Almost like your body goes into shock. Suddenly, you know, too much carbon dioxide comes into the bloodstream and just causes like a sort of a tension, like an astringency, tightening that comes from bitterness or sourness. You know, so, you know, carbon dioxide makes the blood acid, and so it's like a sourness. Yeah, Yeah, so when you get it right, it will take you right to the edge, what I call the point of failure. You'll be uncomfortable. And you'll find it difficult on one level, but also extremely stimulating. And arousing, you know, it's just your energy gets aroused in a way it never normally does. Even sex, you know, does not compare. You know, sex is like the ultimate dead end, yeah? The ultimate death at the end. So here, like in Hebrew, you know, they don't say coming for ejaculation. They say finishing, yeah? I'm finishing. Well, actually, a lot of them do say coming now because English has become so, American English has become so prevalent. Okay. So again, just feel gravity. So gravity is just like a field, yeah? The field with all these vertical lines of flux, of flow. And so you sort of slot into gravity, and the part of you want to slot in is the bit from the min meng down before the tail starts curving under too much. Yeah. So what that will tend to do is get the upper back to lean back a little bit and get the tail to really pull under. And we'd like the upper back not to lean back so much, and we'd like the tail not to cut under so much, so that more and more of my spine can sort of belong to the sacrum and the lower spine. And that's just something that comes with regular practice. But like John would say, that's at least a decade-long project. So you just have to just slot yourself in and just wait. You know, just let gravity work on you. So there's that element of earth, the gravity aspect, but there's also like a suction. So just feel your feet on the ground. Feel this sort of opening up so your feet can really feel like they've come straight down rather than at an angle like this. And just feel the ground sort of sucking energy out of your feet. And so your feet become like suction caps. And it just feels like there's a reduction in pressure in your instep, which is just holding you down. Yeah. So the root is not so much from gravity; it's just much more from this, from the Mother Earth calling your body to it. You know, we hate this. Yeah, we have a real aversion to the earth, which is why we've damaged it to such a degree. So I just want to feel myself being sucked down, yeah? And I just want to really just let that be one of the fundamental things of my being, because the earth is just crying out for your energy. And if you let it, it will drain the head. It will quieten your mind for you. But for that, you really need to open this area, the sacrum, the sacroiliacs, the hip joints, and this dantian needs to relax. So you have to feel that you're relaxing this area, like it's sort of expanding, and your hips are now sort of floating in this space. They're not locked together by the legs. And you can have this sort of local gripping in the dantian, but the space that the dantian rests in is completely relaxed. Yeah. This is what students always find difficult, because in one breath you're talking about relaxation, and in another breath you're talking about tension. So the tension is always springy and dynamic and not chronic. Chronic tension is what we want to get rid of. Yeah, so the earth is sucking me down. Ugh. Yeah. And now let's just turn. So first of all, just get it just turning in the usual way. You don't need to have your legs so wide apart. In a sense, it's just easier to feel the next stage if they are. So you just, you're relaxing, everything is being thrown out. So two effects. There's the centrifugal, which is flying out. So this feeling of expanding from the spine. But there's also a lift, like a levitation. And you'll only feel that if you've really relaxed to gravity and relaxed to the suction in the feet. So as I turn, there's a natural rising up, almost like a nobility that comes up, brings my chest up a little bit. And just makes you attractive. So that's the way to sort of just develop a little bit of charisma. I'm just trying to relax the legs and just trying to keep the spine still in the middle. You're just turning around the spine. You get too much movement leg to leg, then the energy will dissipate. And again, whenever we start an exercise, we start it one way in the real hope that it will switch into something just a little bit more real and spirited. Yeah? So we just start off doing this, and part of us is really content to just carry on. So you can't force that switch. So part of me is just really happy, just swinging my arms around like a lemon. But there's another part of me that's beginning to get a little bit irritated. Yeah. And that will just try and find something to do. Yeah. And that is the legs. So the feet on the ground, sort of twisting. Yeah. So I can twist the foot. So something in me just wants to, just beginning to get like a little bit angry, a little bit annoyed. But in a really sort of gentle way, something I really have to control so it doesn't become annoyance. And you can, the feet can twist either way, really. But I want to get the feeling that this turn is not so much being generated by my mind controlling my hips, but by this sort of massaging, rumbly type activity of the feet on the ground. So my spirit really has to activate in order to work the foot. So it's not the ankle that's twisting, it's the toes that are working. My toes are pushing me round or pulling me round. So it's a bit like, if you've made bread, and you basically knead it until it becomes really springy. And so imagine you're sort of kneading that bread. And so the more springy it becomes, the more energy it returns to you. And in the end, you just feel like it's your whole, almost like you're fucking that dough. Your whole body's involved. So it's the same thing here. So we'd like it to feel as though it's not everything in me has to be involved in this action. And then the mind just has no chance of having its own world. It just has to be there, just making sure that this writhing machine doesn't tip out of balance. Whoa. My toes are expanding, then my toes really grip the ground, and it's that that pulls me round. The more I can open the toes up, the more I'll be able to swallow. A bit like the more I open the mouth, the more I can get into it. The same thing here. The toes really have to open up quite a lot in order to produce enough power to get the body round. Yeah, so it's terribly unpolite. It's not very English, but it's not very Israeli either, because it's just using energy, yeah. And energy and spirit are now just not in evidence, yeah, except in like children or cats, or in the human universe, it's basically been eradicated. We've become too squeaky clean. We've become too hygienic, yeah. We're obsessed with our own health. We are complete narcissists. Pull, pull. And then just bringing it back. Yeah, so it's a bit like sort of just psyching yourself up for the fight, yeah? You know, like those poor, Tommies in the First World War, in the trenches. Imagine how terrified they must have been to actually take that order and go over the top and just see their comrades falling around them. So what you have to do to just muster that energy and just run into death. Yeah. You just need good spirit. And if you're with your comrades, of course, then it's like a communal spirit. Even if you're quite weak and a bit of a baby yourself, you're whipped into this frenzy by the communal spirit, yeah? So it's much easier when you're with a group. When you're on your own and it's only you, it's just more difficult. But it's always possible. Just cast your mind back to those times, when you go out for a run and you basically run yourself to exhaustion. And then you get home, and you're just so relieved. And you just sit down and just that quiet that's just naturally there. It almost feels frightening. It's like a real emptiness, yeah? You can feel all the energy still buzzing inside you, but your mind is completely still. And other people will feel it, yeah? That's when you're at your most attractive, when the mind is quiet and the energy is aroused. If your mind is playing its own little games, then people will feel it. You'll be getting like a double message. So you'll be attracting them with your energy and repelling them with your mind. This is what Bruce Francis was like. It was really interesting going to one of his workshops because he had good energy, and so you felt yourself being drawn towards him and wanting to listen to him and wanting to learn. But in another way, he was the most hideous person I've ever met, and he was just pushing everyone away. So it was really interesting watching the students, So he'd come to Brighton to teach students of a student, and he could just see this sort of vacillation. I really want to like this person because he's my teacher's teacher, but he's so fucking horrible. How can I? Yeah. Okay. And now let's just try something a little bit different, just for the last 5 minutes. So basically, just doing this, but like with a step, yeah? So I here, and then here. So the foot that's stepping is just turning to face either wall. So it's facing this wall here, and then it's facing this wall here, yeah? So it's just basically just turning the waist like we've just been doing, but using that turn to also step with the foot. And it's tricky because the balance gets compromised, but you just have to settle into it. Yeah, so you just set it going and just see where it wants to take you. And maybe it's silly, but you'll never know until you try it. Yeah, so John used to talk about basically Tai Chi, the form. Your body becomes like a door that's just sort of opening and closing, and the door is hinged on the weighted foot. So it's like I have a hinge here, and my body's just like a door that's opening and then closing, opening and closing. And we just want to feel that. And basically the form is just changing the hinge from one side to the other, and then just generally opening the door in order to yield, and then closing it in order to attack. So this is my attack, and this is my yield. And then the cross energy is just so obvious, yeah? The same way the cross energy is obvious in a kick. You can't kick with the foot you've got the weight in. Yeah, so I think, cross energy, I mean, certainly that was the thing that John concentrated on that his teachers didn't. And he always said it's that enabled him to surpass them. So we just like to really feel the cross energies just being totally natural, yeah. It's not even something we have a choice about. Way. Just feel the twist in the weighted foot. So we just want it to get it used, and try not to let the knee come in when you step back. Try and keep the knee out here. And again, try not to let the knee push out this way. So this is really closed in the groin, and this is really open. So we're just going from one extreme to another, just trying again to extend the range slightly. Just letting it extend with the relaxation. And just being with it. What is this giving me that nothing else can? Okay, so now let's just try a little bit with the other foot. Just let it build up. Yeah, so it always feels a little bit useless when you start something, especially if you've reached a certain level of expertise on the other side. So just feel the flywheel of the waist. So the waist gets a certain sort of rhythmic momentum, an angular momentum that just takes your foot with it. Yeah, so you're not a statue that's decided to move. You are movement. The primary fact of your being is that you're alive, and so you're moving. So the movement is taking my foot round. This is one of the things about Tai Chi that's just a bit stupid. You know, the way we sort of just used to freeze everything in order to step, and then everything starts moving again. And again, that's just a stage, you know. Because again, if you're doing form after form, imagine you told yourself, okay, I'm going to be like Yong Sheng Fu today. I'm going to do 30 long forms. Yeah. And you start off. It's just naturally going to speed up as you go through them. Partly because you're getting damn sick of it, and partly because just a bit of spirit is coming in. And so Tai Chi, in a way, it's much more authentic when it's moving quickly. And you'd like the slowness to be simply exactly what you would do if you were doing it quickly. Intensified into slowness. Not relaxed or reduced into slowness. And again, just let the eyes go. If anything, let the eyes go further than you've stepped, because that will then encourage you just to step a tiny bit further the next time. Feel the twisting going on in the spinal erectors. It's really healthy. Almost like the movement is wringing out the spine like a towel, like a wet towel. And just feel the power in this hand, the hand on the side, not the hinge side, the cross energy hand. It could really sort of knock something over. Okay, and now let's just bring it back. And again, just feel all the components we've worked on. So the 2 feet playing with each other, which will either tend to produce a movement side to side or produce a turn. Gravity just pulling you down. That's like the base constant. It's always there, of course. The feet sucking at your feet, the quality of which will always depend upon the ground that you're standing on. Obviously, if you're standing on like a dense rock, it's going to pull a little bit more strongly than if you're standing on loose sand. But it will always be pulling. And just feeling the breath. The breath is infusing the spine, and then it's breathing out. So you just want to feel all these rhythms threatening to send you over the top. Yeah, so without this, you'd never make that leap. You'd be shot by one of the MPs that's just ready to kill the cowards. You've got a choice, either a bullet in the head from one of your own, or just to leap over the top and just be mown down. And it's interesting, like, when you see films of like the First World War, you've got all these frightened boys. I mean, they're basically, a lot of them are sort of under 16. They're just boys, yeah. And in order to get into the action, to get over the top, they just scream. They just bellow and scream. They all join this sort of war cry. And they just become superhuman. They become something else. It's almost like an animal is drawn out of them. And it's that runs forward, bringing this human body, this weak human body behind it. That film they made in 2018, the centenary of the end of the war. That's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Just using footage of the First World War. It was Peter Jackson that made it, and he just did an amazing job. And they've coloured it, and they've put some parts of put a voiceover, because someone's been able to lip read the mouths of the soldiers, because of course then it was only silent movies that were available. And they're all so beautiful. They're so young and happy, and just all with terrible teeth, I remember. Yeah, because there was a level of poverty then that we just can't imagine. This is what happened when they joined up. They started getting decent meals, and so they all put on loads of weight, not fat, just muscle. Because when they started, they were all like really sort of hadn't grown up. They were just little boys, yeah, because they just hadn't had the food. We don't know we're alive now. It's like Wilfred Owen, and some of the most beautiful poems ever written. So he got wounded at the front, and he was sent back home, and he had the chance of just resting out the rest of the war. A hero. And he just couldn't stand that lack of reality that was there. For him, what was real was the comradeship he felt when he was at the front. So he went back, and like 3 days before armistice, he was shot, fell into the river, and they never found his body. The poetry is in the pity. The eternal reciprocity of tears. It's one of his phrases. So let's just bring it up. Yeah, so just feel it. So when the feet are closer together, if anything, those sort of twisty movements inside can be even stronger, because obviously when you've got your feet out like this, it's inhibiting the turn. Whereas here, there's much more turn. But of course, if it's too easy, then it will just slacken and dribble away. So you need to produce inner tension so that your body has something to fight. Yeah. This is what's difficult, especially nowadays, especially people that have never really used their body in an athletic way. You know, sort of couch potatoes, which we tend to become when we retire. Okay, very good.